Hello everyone and welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about Myers-Briggs and what it is. And I think it's something that most of us have a little bit of an idea of it. Maybe some of us had never heard of it. But when I'm talking about Myers-Briggs, I'm talking about the 16 personality types derived out there. And this is based on the work of both Carl Jung and also Catherine Briggs and Isabel Myers, mother-daughter duo, who made the work of Carl Jung into what we now know as the Myers-Briggs test. So basically, the test is measuring. It's You answer a series of questions, and it puts you with a four-letter acronym based on, in other words, you're put in a category or type based on your answers to the question. Now, the test is looking at how you see the world, how you make decisions, and how you take in information. That's primarily, it's not necessarily about what's your favorite hobby or what kind of things are you interested in. It's not about that. It's more about how your brain works, how you interact with the world, basically. So I guess looking deeper to understand our behaviors and how we are, basically. So I'm going to be talking about the four different. There's four different letters, and each of the letters what they mean. So the first letter of the four is E or I. So E stands for extrovert and I stands for introvert. Now, I think a lot of us have a pretty good idea of what this is, but I'm going to go into a little bit deeper. So when we think of an extrovert, we think of someone social, we think of someone confident, probably had lots of friends. When we think of someone who has an introvert, maybe someone a little bit more quiet, maybe someone a bit more shy. Now, look, these are general truths. There's definitely a truth to both of that, but it actually goes a lot deeper than that. So an extrovert is someone who, in basically in a social situation, an extrovert is more likely to speak before they think and be a lot more comfortable with that. And therefore, an extrovert is a lot more comfortable with having lots of stimulation, for example, in a party or in maybe a festival, because an extrovert doesn't get tired by that. In fact, an extrovert likes that because basically the way an extrovert's brain works is that when it's got a stimuli, it's reacting to that and it's responding to that a lot quicker. Whereas an introvert, when it's getting an external stimuli, such as like lots of interaction, it drains an introvert a lot more because an introvert is a lot more introspective. So they will take the information in and they will actually take their time before they speak. So they kind of think before they speak. Therefore, parties are a lot more draining for introverts. So it's all about energy and how we get our energy from. Uh, the next one is N or S, intuition or sensing. Now this is a kind of a tricky one to explain, but it's actually a really, really important one. In fact, it's probably the sense that, or the type that really probably tells you a lot about that person, and can kind of be a make or break factor when you think of like relationships and friendships as well. But anyway, so I'll start with sensing. Sensing S, basically someone who is more of a sensor is more likely to see the world in terms of the literal five senses. So they're more likely to see things for what they are, basically see things how they are and what they've been taught, and basically a little bit more literal and in the real world, so to speak. Um, and an N type is different in the sense that, of course, they still use their five senses, we all do, but they are more likely to put their energy towards something that's not obvious, maybe the hidden possibilities or the hidden meanings to something, reading between the lines, kind of more abstract, looking at the bigger picture, tying all the things together. So, for example, this is a thing that just came up to my mind the other day. So, for example, this is a really good question to determine if you're an N or an S. So, an S is more likely to just say you went out, you went on a hiking trip, and you saw amazing nature and like maybe an amazing scene. So an S will obviously marvel that sensing eyes, maybe smells, maybe sounds, um, and they'll be so overwhelmed by that, and it will be amazing. It will be very stimulating to them, and they'll get a high from that. The N as well, but the N will be more like when they're like walking around the path, they'll be like thinking, "Wow, look at those trees! Those trees. They are just they are aligned, but they are not perfect. Some trees are taller than others, but they're all coexisting peacefully. Wow, this shows that we can learn something from nature. It shows that nature isn't perfect and that we can coexist um, and it doesn't matter that one tree is taller than another, they're both coexisting together. And this tells us a lot about life. And this also applies to humans and how it doesn't matter if one person is more attractive than another person. We're both equal in that sense, or something like that. So that's something an N would do. They will look at the hidden possibilities, reading between the lines, looking a little bit deeper into, I guess, what's more obvious. So yeah, N versus S is a really big one. The next one is T and F, which is thinking versus feeling. Um, so basically, when we think about this, we think about thoughts, logic, and then we think about our feelings. Now, it's about what we trust more and what we show and basically what affects us more. So a feeling type will be more likely to be in tune with their feelings. They're more likely to trust their feelings. They're more likely to express their feelings, and basically, maybe they'll wake up one day and say, "Oh, what do I feel like? Okay, I feel like that. Therefore, I'll do that." A T type is different. A T type's a lot more logical, a lot more rational. They will trust their thoughts more. They will trust rational thought, and they'll go by that thought. So I just want to stress that basically it doesn't mean that a T type doesn't experience feelings. Both T and F people, actually all humans, have feelings. It's just about how much we put energy or how much we trust them. And as I said, an F is more likely to trust their feelings as opposed to a T. Now, neither is good or bad. Obviously, there's situations in life where we need a bit of both. For example, human relationships would be more of an F thing, and systems and practicalities and things, objects, would be more of a T thing. Again, we need both in this world. Okay, I'll move to the final one, which is the P and the J. So P stands for perceiving, and J stands for judging. Now, judging is not necessarily judging in the sense that you're judgmental. It's got a completely different meaning. P versus J is about our decision-making processes and how we make decisions. So basically, to keep it simple, a P is more likely to hold off putting a decision and have a lot of possibilities, whereas a J is more decisive and likes to plan and also likes to have a decision and likes to have a date and is probably more likely to follow the rules, whereas a P is just usually curious and more open-ended and doesn't like to have plans because they feel it's going to restrict them. So if you think about life decisions, a P is more likely to change their life decision and keep a life decision open, whereas a J will be like, no, I've made that date, therefore it's a be all ends all, and I'm going to put all my energy into that date. And yeah, so that's the difference there. So basically, after you answer the questions, the test will put you as either you're more dominant in either one of these 4 letters, and then you'll come up with a different type, and there's 16 different types. Something for another video that I'll talk about is about functions, because each of the types have a preferred function, a secondary function, etc. I'm not going to go into that in this video because this is just a basic summary, but I think the functions are really, really important when it comes to actually understanding types and how they interact with the world. Now, I've said this, I also wanted to talk about friendships and even like partnerships and perfect matches, so to speak. So basically, what is a perfect match? It's basically, we all know that it's about balance. So for anyone, and as we are as people going through this journey in life, we should always try to develop our weaknesses and try to find a bit more of a balance. Because as I sort of said before about all the different letters, they're both neither good or bad. We both need them, and we both can learn from others to help to build our functions. So, for example, an extrovert should try and work and be a little bit more introverted, because an extrovert is more likely to just be a little bit all over the place and maybe be out of touch with their inner world because they're so focused on external stuff. So they're always doing stuff, but they don't really know why they're doing it. So an introvert helps an extrovert in that sense. Same as feelers and thinkers. So a feeler is always going to be very in touch with their emotions, and that's a really good thing. But sometimes, as we know, sometimes emotions can get in the way of the realities of life, the physical world, and it can lead us to make irrational decisions which could hurt us in the future. So a thinker, being more logical, can help balance a feeler out. And the same with J and P. So someone who is always so open-ended and maybe never making decisions, kind of floating on in life without any path. Well, Jay is going to help them to kind of be a bit more decisive and ask, what do you really want? And kind of break it down into smaller steps. Whereas a P could just be overwhelmed and might not even complete a project because they're just so overwhelmed. They've got the idea, but they just never follow through. So that's why opposites attract. Now, I'll just point out one thing. The only difference there is the N versus the S. In this sense, it's actually better to find someone who has your same function. So N's are attracted to N's and S's are more compatible with S's. And this is just because this is basically the number one function in terms of how we view the world. And it's something that doesn't need to be changed, so to speak. Like if someone's more S or if someone's more N, they both have their strengths and weaknesses, but it's not a bad thing to be either one or the other. But it is such something so ingrained in your thought processes that there's a lot of misunderstanding between N and S's. And I mean, I know that from my personal experience as well. It's just something that it's like when you get someone, you know what I mean? Like you just get their way of thinking, you get who they are, and that's just about N and S's. So yeah. Final thoughts. Myers-Briggs test is wonderful. It's a great way to understand yourself. It's not the be or ends all. Anything that's going to put you in a category or in a box, obviously we know that there's the human experience is a lot bigger than that. But I just say that the Myers-Briggs is really wonderful in the sense that it helps explain why we do things or why we think that way, and it really helps explain a lot about myself and other people, and why I click with some people and not with others, and then realizing that it's nothing about me, it's just about different ways of viewing the world and different, I guess, compatibilities and wavelengths. So yeah, it's really, really interesting tool. So I hope you've learned something from this video. I'm going to do more videos about Myers-Briggs and also psychology. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. And thank you for listening. And I hope you've... by the way, I'm going to also share the link of the test, 16personalities.com. I'm not affiliated with the website, but it's just, I think, one of the best tests out there that you can do. So I'm going to put the link on the link below, and you can take the test. It takes about 12 minutes, and then you can comment and tell me what type you are, because I'm really, really curious. I'm trying to type all my friends these days. And let me know what type you are, and we can talk more. And yeah. Thank you, and bye-bye.